Next up is a presentation on the 6 pillars that, I don't know if you all know that UK Lebanon Tech Hub launched last April. They've been a great addition to the ecosystem in Lebanon, and they've been working really hard to find and tackle the obstacles that are facing the Lebanese ecosystem and entrepreneurship ecosystem to move it forward. On stage next is Nadim Zaazaa, the country manager for UK Lebanon Tech Hub, and he will be sharing their 6 top findings from their recent research and roundtables that they've been doing.
I'm Nadim. If you don't know me, I'm the country director of the UK Lebanon Tech Hub. This is our first year in operation as of the end of this month. I would like to present to you our observations, having been active in the Lebanese ecosystem for the last year. I've been thinking about doing this in a way that could maybe appeal to you, so I'm going to personalize it a little bit. This ecosystem has been growing very quickly since, I guess, 2013, when ArabNet first launched in Beirut, which was, I think, 2008, right, Rasha? You're here somewhere? Rasha? When was the first ArabNet? 2010. In 2010, I tried to get a ticket to ArabNet, and I couldn't. And now I'm speaking here, so that's very interesting, and that can show you the growth of the ecosystem and the number of new players coming in, whether you're entrepreneurs, whether you are support platforms, or you are VCs. Of course, all of this has been boosted by 331, and you can see the rise in number of venture capital in Lebanon. You can also see the rise in number of players in the ecosystem, whether they are funding partners, support organizations, spaces, incubators, and accelerators, or education players. Now, you all know that maybe many of you know the UK Lebanon Tech Hub as an accelerator, which we are, but we are a little bit more than that. And today I'm here to talk about some of the other things that we've been doing in the last year, and one of them is we've been trying to scope the ecosystem in Lebanon to try to identify where can we focus resources in some sort of global flagship, things that Lebanon can be competitive at internationally. Right, so we did 2 things. One, we started a scoping of a mapping of the Lebanese ecosystem. We looked at all the companies out there in the ICT sector, and it was a massive challenge. And that's a big issue that we usually overlook because we don't feel it's important, which is data. And I'm going to be focusing on mostly data throughout this presentation. So what we did is we did 3 things. One is a mapping. We sent people out just to talk to the companies that are out there. We found some of the embarrassing or uncomfortable things that they would like to talk about, which is how much money they make. And as you all know, every company in Lebanon has 2 income sheets, one for the state and one for the auditor. And that's a problem. And that will be a problem in Lebanon's growth in the future, and we have to tackle that as individuals. We can blame the government, which is an easy target, but we have to also think of what we can do together to grow more exponentially. The other thing we did was we became the national team for the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor for Lebanon. And we did 2 things. We did an adult population survey to look at the perception of entrepreneurship in Lebanon. And this was a very interesting exercise because for once we actually stepped out of the ecosystem and started interviewing people in Akkar, Bekaa in the south. And it was very interesting in terms of findings because these people have a different conceptualization of what entrepreneurship is and what it entails and what they need to be doing to be a part of it. These are the findings. And if you look a bit more closely at it, you will notice that it's not very surprising because we score in very disastrous when it comes to government policies, when it comes to infrastructure, but we do very well when it comes to cultural and social norms. We do very well when it comes to commercial and legal infrastructure compared to other countries, and that's a surprise. We have relatively good entrepreneurship education at post-school, and we still find a lot of difficulty in terms of internal market burdens or entry regulation and internal market dynamics. It was a very interesting thing to look at because it was a perception. It wasn't actually fact. It wasn't data-driven because people answer questions based on how they perceive them. They don't actually know the data. And I wanted to highlight 6 points that people actually misperceive in this country. And this is based on what we've been finding in the last year. I'll start with some of the data, and then I'm going to show you the difference between data and perception. If you look at the sectors, we're looking at orange is the number of employees, and blue is the number of companies. As you can see, there's a total of maybe 300 companies, which is relatively small. And you can see that the size of the companies, the biggest companies are in enterprise software, marketing and advertising technologies, infrastructure, and you can consider that to be ICT infrastructure. And you will see some in e-commerce, and the rest are in value-added services. A little hint about the categorization of value-added services is usually companies that economists find hard to identify, which is a problem when you're looking at data and trying to understand it. Now, this is where we are right now in Lebanon as data. And when you ask people, what are we good at? You rarely hear that we are good in enterprise software. You rarely hear that we are good in coding. You know, we rarely hear that, embedded software. And the problem is, and actually you hear the exact opposite. Where are all the developers? We don't have enough developers, right? You know, anybody here is a UX, UI developer? No. So if I was a student, I'd be studying that. Okay. Now, what we did is we tried to align what we found against global and regional trends. And what we notice is that you've got enough e-commerce, you've got enough e-government, you've got a lot of e-payment. You do have relatively low enterprise software, and that's global and regional. You have almost nothing on media streaming, almost nothing on medical devices, very low on semiconductors, a lot on small hardware products. Social media management is almost negligible. And telecom services is very high, but we all know that this sector is going to hell very soon. So what we see here is opportunity and we see challenge, right? Where can we, as Lebanese, focus so that we be competitive, so that we be pioneers globally? And that's kind of bold thinking that we need to be running amongst ourselves. Next. Right. So against this data, I tried to compile the things that I hear so often when I talk to people in the ecosystem. And I'm a newcomer, so sometimes I'm a bit naive, sometimes I come off as a bit dumbfounded by the things that I hear. So these are the 4 things that I've heard constantly. There are not enough investable companies to match the increase in funds and the increase in support entities. And I've heard that mostly from VCs, but also from the accelerators, and some of the top entrepreneurs, people who have done it, who have experienced all of this, that we have a lot of companies, but they're not investable. They're not good. Why is that? That's the question. The other thing we heard is that there's not enough talent. Where are all the developers? But this is weird, because we kind of score quite high on enterprise software. So where are all these people who are actually working in these institutions? Where are they? Who is it? How come we have Murex? How come we have Soft Solutions? And these are quite big companies servicing massive clients like Carrefour, right? Half the banks of Europe are actually serviced by Murex. And they are based out of Lebanon. Who's developing their software? The other thing is too many entrepreneurs. I'll talk about myself. When I first told my dad I'm going to start my own business, he was very happy and he said, it's always good to have business on the side. And I said, no, it's not a business on the side, it's a business. And I need $5,000, but I'm still to give it back. He'll have his share one day. So too many entrepreneurs. Do we really have people who are taking the plunge? Do we give them everything they need for them to take the plunge? That's a very big question to have. And the last thing I always hear, and that's really fascinating, is exits. We always hear the word exits. We need exits. We need big exits. We need to actually blast it all around the world, because it's the only way we can showcase our success as an ecosystem. And that's very fascinating, because if you think about it, if you actually reach a certain point in your company where you are a lucrative investment for big VCs, meaning big exit, maybe you should stop for a while and think, what if I actually stick to my game and keep going. Why should I actually exit? And that's interesting. I've rarely heard people here say, what about keep growing? Okay? And maybe one of the smart answers we hear is that the country is too small to grow global companies. But we do have some counter examples. We do have them. We have seen Murex, we have seen Soft Solutions, and I can give other examples, but I'm going to stick to just two. So can I have the next slide? So we looked at all the different things that you need to be asking yourself. So these are the 6 factors we've seen. How many jobs is this industry creating every year? Right? A recent LFE report jointly with IDAL said that we can create as much as 7,000 jobs in the near future. The other question we should be asking ourselves is there available balanced funding? Meaning that, do I have funding at every stage of my growth? Right? The next point we need to look at is revenue growth. This is a big mystery for us because we don't really know your growth. None of you share the real revenues. Even companies in our accelerator, we've had a challenge to ask them, how much money do you make per year? Right? And I'm going to talk about this uncomfortable issue because it is uncomfortable. You don't really know. So what's the year-on-year growth rate of the sector? How much money are we really making? What is the return on investment in terms of dollar value? Forget the profits for now, because we can worry about that later. We would really like to know how is the sector performing right now? We have estimates, we don't have data. Talent, I hear that all the time. Talents are about standards not only of people, but they are also about products and processes. Because if I'm a talented person and I work at a company that sucks, I go to waste, right? It's important to have an enabling management system, a culture in the company, somebody to inspire me, to teach me. And the question is, for me always is, how am I ever going to have a UX, UI designer or developer in this country if there are rarely any projects for them to learn? Just throw something at them. Let them try. Let them do something so that they can learn. Let them fail. And that's the thing we find interesting in comparison between Lebanese entrepreneurs and foreign entrepreneurs. The problem is they don't have the opportunity to fail and the opportunity to learn. And we notice that in terms of skills, where we have too much learning on the job for Lebanese entrepreneurs compared to international entrepreneurs in other geographies. And not even Silicon Valley, but even emerging markets, Cairo, India, Estonia. These are small ecosystems that can actually compare to Lebanon. And the report we did that comparison, and we noticed this very interesting gap. Exports. Who are you selling to? If yes, then you should ask yourself, what are you selling? Where are you selling it? And why? Why are we selling it? So it's interesting because in our accelerator, we actually ask people to tell us how their product can grow globally. The question is, we don't ask them, what is the go-to-market strategy? And why should you be the differentiative factor? Why should you be the one who does this, not somebody else with much more scale like Ukraine? And the last thing is partnerships. We should ask ourselves as an ecosystem, who is interested in being here, in being part of this game? Why? Why are they interested in being here, and why not? And maybe try to differentiate between the things that we can control and the things that we can't, like telecoms, for instance. So these are the 6 questions that we faced that our report answers. These are to us, these are the things that will inform our next steps as the UK Lebanon Tech Hub. And I think that they should trigger something in you guys, which is the importance of data. Because if you want funding, and you're going to complain from the excessive due diligence that you are going to get from your lending partners, you ask for it. Have that data out there. When you invest in a company, have that data out there. When you hire people, have that data out there. When you are selling to foreign markets, have that data out there. I'm going to give you why we think, from a macro perspective, this is important. Sorry, next. So if you look at kind of a holistic approach to an ecosystem, which is technically a sector with a different way of approaching its management, you notice that at the basis you've got science and innovation, right? And in Lebanon, you do see this as a very interesting finding, that we have a lot of innovation on the business side. We have very little investment in innovation on the science side. When I went on a visit to an R&D in the UK, they actually get commercial officers, pay them shitloads of money to actually turn scientific discoveries into business. In Lebanon, we have the exact opposite. Oh, I got this great idea, I wonder if it works. So where is the investment in science and innovation? What's that data out there? What's being researched? What's being done? What about talent and experience? How are we nurturing the talent that we have in this country or the potential for it? What about the environment to do business? Now, we do very well here because it's the bit that actually gives us a lot of opportunities to increase revenues as startups, but also to gain project experience. And here I ask you all, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you do know that entrepreneurs, 99% of them make less than the engineer number 100 in Facebook. Do you really want to be an entrepreneur? Wouldn't you rather be in a startup so that you can watch somebody else fail rather than you do it yourself? And maybe then you can get the project experience you're looking for. And what we do need is the market dynamics that allow us to have global reach. How do our startups access international markets? And we've learned a lot from our accelerator, where we've seen the obstacles that companies face in markets such as the UK or the US in trying to sell their products. This is a holistic approach to an ecosystem in comparison with a number of other countries that we've looked at. The major difference that we've noticed, we have summed all of this in our report, but I ask you to consider this very carefully. The single thing that we can do, that we do not need government, we do not need ministers, we do not need anybody to do, is actually get on the data grid. It's actually a very bold move for many of the Lebanese companies who know what Daman is like and Ministry of Finance is like and so on and so forth. But it's important to get on the data grid. So GEM is one example for the world to measure how Lebanon is performing in this ecosystem. It will bring in the partnerships and the skills and the contracts and the clients if you actually show what you're worth. There is another project out there that I wanted to raise your attention to. It is run by the World Bank. It is called Global Entrepreneurship Research. Can you give me the name, Victor, again? It's a Global Entrepreneurship Research Network, GERN, and it's very important that you get on that data grid and you put in your data. I'm going to show you a 1-minute video, and then I can take maybe 1 or 2 questions. I will do the live commentary. Please enter your name here, email, data. So the idea of this video is actually to show you the importance of getting your data on some sort of data set or system that can track not only how much money you make, the number of employees you have in your company, but it is also who's your mentor, who's invested in you, how did you meet your founders, because we need to understand the social drivers of the cluster. We need to understand where is the activity happening most, where do the companies start up, where do the companies grow, where are they based, where do they hire from, which universities, so on and so forth. This is very important for our growth. So my invitation to you is please add in your data in such projects so that you can help us manage the ecosystem better so that we can grow in a more exponential fashion. I can take only 1 question? 2 questions. 1, 2, okay. Any questions? No? Okay, good. Thank you.